Hey everyone, CPO here, and I finally got out to do some testing with the ORO SwayLoc that I installed a little while back. And I'd like to say it was super easy to go out, test the differences between the SwayLoc and without the SwayLoc, or in a disconnected state. Turns out science is hard. It's a little tougher than I expected because I'm in an uncontrolled environment. So my plan was to go out and I got this app that has seismographic monitoring. So basically it monitors vibration and tilt in all three axes. So what I did is I mounted that in the Jeep in the center of the console, same place every time, and then I figured I would measure body roll, Jeep roll, through a variety of different courses. So one of them was the road course, which was actually the easiest to recreate consistently because I could go a consistent speed, I could drive a known route, and I could, for the most part, hit the same parts of the road over and over again. So I actually did a test like that 3 times. Once with the stock connected sway bar, again completely with the sway bar disconnected, as if you were in off-road mode, which is not recommended, by the way. And then the third time is after I installed the ORO SwayLoc and in the on-road position. So I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. Then I wanted to test the off-road performance, and really what I did there is I tested with the SwayLoc in off-road mode but connected, and then I tested disconnected, where I basically removed one of the links, kind of like you would disconnect your traditional sway bar. And then I wanted to compare those readings from the tilt sensor in both of those conditions. As it turns out, it's really hard off-road to hit every rock the same way and all that stuff. So there's way too many variables to make this a great scientific study. But I'm going to show you the results anyway, and you know, if there's anybody out there who has a better way to do this, I'd certainly challenge you to do it yourself or help me do it. That would be really awesome. I had fun testing, but it wasn't as easy as I was sort of hoping it might be. The results are clear though, even though, well, let's start from the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Yeah, so not that far back. Let's start at the road test. So the road test here, as you can see, the graph has the blue being stock connected, the red is disconnected entirely, and the yellow is with the ORO. And I hit the same points in the road at the same speed as consistently as I could get. This is a pretty long stretch of road, a couple miles, but you can see how the peaks sort of align where I'm trying to drive very similarly. The other thing you'll notice is in almost all cases, the ORO, the yellow one, has less body sway than even the stock setting connected, and of course by far more than disconnected, which is just there sort of for reference. So that's the road test. And the road test does conclude pretty clearly that the ORO in the on-road setting has a tighter sort of feel. There's not as much sway. It's more of a race car sort of a feeling. It's not lifted Jeep feeling on the road. And this backs that up. All right, so for the off-road part of the testing, I went out to Chaos Off-Road Park. You can check out their website, chaosoffroadpark.com. They're in Cape and Bridge, West Virginia. Really cool park. It's open primarily in the summertime. They do have some other special events and training workshops and things like that in other parts of the year. As a matter of fact, when I went out there, they were in the middle of doing a off-road recovery and an advanced wheeling workshop. The park, one of the cool things about it is it's very diverse. It's stock friendly for the most part, but there's some obstacles to pretty much suit every level of experience or vehicle build. So your bone stalkers all the way up to buggies will find something to occupy your time. So really cool place to visit if you haven't been there. So you might recognize this Jeep. This is AK Watley's Jeep. AK is the owner of Chaos Fab Shop and Chaos Off-Road Park, of course. This Jeep, Dozer, was the Jeep that he drove in Truck Night in America. If you watch that show, and if you don't, you really should check that out.
My name is AK Watley from Winchester, Virginia. This is called the Dozer.
Yeah! But he won Truck Night in America in this Jeep, and the reason I'm telling you that, not only because it's cool, but because this Jeep is running, yes, ORO SwayLocs. He's not only just running them in the front, he's also running them in the rear, which he tells me is a game changer. So hopefully one day I'll have a chance to put them on the rear. Right now I just have the front. All right, anyway, let's get back to the off-road testing. And again, this is really hard to do, harder to show. And so what I did is I did some side-by-side testing where you can see here on the left, I have the ORO SwayLoc in the off-road setting, and then on the right, I have disconnected, and my goal was to try and show the difference, and well, it's harder than I expected. I can tell you this though, the ORO SwayLoc was a more controlled feel. It had less sort of side-to-side bounce. I don't know if you see it in the video, and it's, like I said, it's really hard to show, and it's just gonna look like I'm saying it's got less body roll because it's supposed to have less body roll, but it really does sort of feel different. So one of the other things I wanted to do is test like overall flexibility. So this is a big rock, and I drove on this big rock, tried to hit it in the same spot, both disconnected and with the SwayLoc, to look for whether or not the SwayLoc being connected limited my flexibility, and it doesn't. I mean, granted, this doesn't cover all situations, but I feel like I have just the same amount of articulation with the SwayLoc in, and of course, the off-road setting as I do completely disconnected. And when it comes down to coming off the rock, there is a little bit less body tilt. You can kind of see that the body's not quite as canted over. So I've got enough suspension flexibility and articulation to do the obstacle pretty much exactly the same way, yet the body isn't canted over as far with the SwayLoc, which gives me a more controlled feel. And so all of this is subjective, and again, I was really hoping for some like proof positive. You can just look at the video and go, oh my God, the difference is incredible. Now, perhaps the difference is greater at speed. That is one thing that I was thinking about, is as I'm doing this, I'm doing it in a sort of slow crawling speed, and I kept the same speed between all of the runs, and it's possible that doing things even faster would enhance the differences between the SwayLoc and the disconnected state. But like I said, I can tell you the SwayLoc is better than disconnected. But let's look at the data, because I did say there is some proof positive result. And so even though the video sort of makes it tough because it's hard to hit exactly every rock in the same way at the same time, I can tell you this, the data doesn't lie. And in every single case where I did an A/B comparison, where I compared the SwayLoc versus the disconnected state, every single time the data reveals less body sway overall with the ORO. All right, so I'm not going to dwell on this stuff too much because, quite frankly, it will boggle the mind. But this is the most consistent run I feel like I had. This was the rocky flat. This is this one. It was a fairly flat surface, but rocky. So I felt like I was best able to sort of get consistent results through the path. And as you can see here, this is coming towards the camera, and then I turn around, and then this is going away from the camera. And in this case, the blue is the ORO and the red is disconnected. But even as tight as I felt like I was able to get that, the results are still sort of back and forth on here because, well, I can't hit every rock exactly the same. And so, yeah, so I have to rely on other data points. So all of the data, by the way, this is all the data here, like from both runs. So what I did is I did a statistical look at the numbers and figured out which ones make the most sense. So mean and median, you know, those are going to be variable depending on how the angle that I'm starting whenever I start this. But what, so the absolute numbers don't really matter too much, but how much I vary from that once I get started does matter. And in every case, like I said, the ORO ends up with less difference from the center point, the median into the mean, however you want to measure it. But basically, you know, we're looking at the mean here. But yeah, then disconnected. So like I said, a little statistical stuff here, but average deviation is and the average deviation mean is the average of how far away from the midpoint we end up. So if you look at body sway left and right, this is the average of how far away we get from the center point. And if you look, the average deviated mean on the ORO is less than disconnected. The numbers don't lie, right? So that entire run, as hard as it is to interpret exactly what's going on, this says we had less body sway with the ORO than we did without it, right? Then we look at the variance, and this is, you know, how far away we're getting from that, that center. And again, it's lower than disconnected. And then the standard deviation, again, lower than disconnected. So the numbers are consistently pointing towards ORO as being a tighter run, right? So let's pick another one. This is a downhill. Again, total mess. Like, how do you even tell what's going on here? I'm hitting different rocks at different times. It's a total mess. But look, the numbers are exactly the same. The average deviation mean, the variance, the standard deviation is all consistently lower with the ORO than disconnected. Thus, we're demonstrating less body sway, right? So less bouncing back and forth and more controlled feel as we go down these obstacles. And so the one that's probably really the easiest to see is back on the road test, right? You can see here clearly the yellow ORO is tighter than the others. And so what do the numbers show? Well, of course, if we look at average deviation mean and variance and standard deviation, they are, so these are kind of backwards. So stock, this is the connected stock factory sway bar. This is disconnected. But clearly the numbers are all better. Less body sway, less variance, less deviation from the midpoint in all cases. So whether it's on the road or on this run or on this run, the numbers all come out pointing to the ORO as being a tighter fill. So what's the takeaway here? Well, first of all, I'm super thrilled that the data is showing the same thing that I can feel in the seat, but I can't really articulate. And the video doesn't really do it justice. But again, the data doesn't lie, and it is a tighter, more controlled fill off-road without limiting my overall articulation. So I'm 100% pleased with the decision to move to the ORO SwayLoc. You know, curious to hear what your thoughts are. If you've got experience in testing the differences between, there's not any videos out there doing this, so that's why I tried to tackle it on my own. But yeah, put in the comments what experiences do you have with this, and if you have suggestions on how to better test the differences. But again, like I said, the data doesn't lie. It does show the ORO has less body sway overall than disconnected, and then even on the road has less body sway than the factory connected sway bar. So all of those things are mirroring what I'm sensing when I'm driving the Jeep. So I'm happy to be able to show that to you here in this video. Anyway, guys, you can't go wrong with the SwayLoc. That's the whole point of this video, is that if you take away nothing else, walk away with that. Anyway, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. Again, if you have any recommendations of how I can do this better, put them in the comments below. If you've done the testing yourself, or you have any other anecdotal evidence that you know, one way or the other provides proof that you know, the difference between the ORO and a regular sway bar, would love to hear it. Comment below. If you haven't subscribed yet, why haven't you? Seriously. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you on the next one.